Welcome to the fourth branch, the place for common sense. Today is Saturday, June 29th, 2019. I am MD. Today we will continue full presentation of our program. On Saturdays, as already said, in our programming, we usually tackle a controversial issue. We've been talking about war on blacks, abortion, homosexuality. Today we will continue with the premise of war on blacks. As such, we always put a warning that the program is not suitable for everyone. Not because you should not be concerned, but rather because not everybody is interested in advancing equality. Not everybody is interested in the plight of other races. Not everybody cares, and yet there are others who would like to make it worse. As such, the program has been dedicated exclusively to those who have common sense, and of course those who express a degree of interest in solving social issues, mankind issues. Today we will also take the opportunity to show you that no matter where you stand, which side, whatever action you take or inaction, it has rippling effect not only in your household, in your community, in your state, in your country, and even across the world. As such, there is no such thing as an individual who has done something and it does not matter because the individual is not the president of the United States or the president or the head of state or some other country, but to show that everyone on the face of this planet will suffer the same fate, will go out the same way. As such, we all should have an interest in solving mankind issues, social issues. Now we already know not many people are interested, especially those who are selfish and those who are gung-ho about doing things that only benefit themselves and nobody else. So social issues such as race relations are not something to simply shrug off, sweep under the rug, or live as if it doesn't matter, because it does. In just a moment, we will tackle a few of the items in that controversial topic. Once again, you are on the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. Live from New York City, at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The fourth branch presents discussions, debates, commentaries on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on controversial issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, will make you smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Welcome to Common Sense. If you join us for the first time, welcome to the Fourth French. If you have joined us before, thank you for your participation. You make the journey a little bit lighter. For those who have joined for the first time, the Fourth French program is not associated with any political party. The ultimate objective is to perfect the union. In order to do so, we have to remove ignorance, which is considered the biggest obstacle to any democracy. Ignorance is very dangerous. In fact, in one of my podcasts, I dissected the danger of ignorance. We mentioned before that we were all born ignorant. Indeed, we were all born ignorant. No one was born a genius. I know you've heard the expression before, and you probably repeated it, subscribed to it, but I'm here to tell you that no one was born a genius. We become geniuses. Well, not we, some of us become geniuses because we able to grasp concept a little bit faster, easier than others. Some people, when you go to school, it may take you a few tries, it may take you a little bit more effort, but the individual have a very high level of ability, can easily grasp concept, complex concept without much effort. Those are the individual we dub geniuses. But even those individuals had to learn to say mama, papa, has to learn to walk, has to learn to read. So we can safely say that we were all born ignorant. So ignorance is not, being born ignorant is not really the issue. Some of us recognize that's the case and we do something about it. Others decide to simply live life and completely ignore, no pun intended, the danger in ignorance. Now, it is already innate, embedded in that very problem, in ignorance that is. But when you have individuals who make use of ignorance to enrich themselves to the detriment of others, then society becomes even it's worse. We're going to give you a couple of examples of individuals who have relied exclusively on the ignorance of others, but instead of educating them, have decided to dumbify them, make them even the worst of themselves. Now, we've always revered capitalism as being, well, the best thing, the best form to have in any country. In fact, here in the United States, politicians have always been dancing around the issue and not wanting to be labeled socialism. There's only one individual that seems to be okay with that. Of course, there is a second one. It's Cortez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, newest member of Congress, and of course Bernie Sanders, who does not have any problem being labeled socialist. But in general, here in the United States, that label is feared, is considered a plague. Unfortunately, because of ignorance, the idea itself is shunned, shied away from, abandoned, even hidden by politicians who actually would tell you that they like some of the ideas within the socialism a socialist type of government. Now, this is not an argument for socialism or capitalism or any form of government, but rather a discussion about why there is a certain irony in life. In fact, during the 2020 presidential election, you've already seen this approach by the Republican to use scare tactic in order to ensure the re-election of Donald Trump, no matter how bad you see things are. But their idea is to deploy the monster, and that's for the past 7+ decades. That's the way Republicans win election. They never really have anything of substance. In fact, I've already begun the discussion and show you that most of what Republicans have done are detrimental to their constituent, detrimental to the country, and yet they manage to keep their post, their position. And the reason is because they are masters of deception, and they always manage to scare their constituent away from the other side. Now, there is a big difference. We're not here to discuss politics, but that's relevant. There is a major difference between Democrats and Republicans, and we're not talking about just in terms of ideology. You see, Democrats in general like to present things the way that they tend to govern in terms of policies. So they tell you, for instance, just an example, during Bill Clinton, going to raise taxes on you because we have to pay down the debt. So Democrats are upfront about how they govern. But it so happened that by telling the country that, telling the constituent that, the Republican in general run away from Democrat because, Democrats are going to raise taxes. And the reason that they feel that way is because, as I mentioned, are upfront. The Republican legislators, on the other hand, do exactly worse than Democrat in terms of raising taxes, but they tell their constituent they're going to cut taxes. So the constituent love the idea. Of course, those who have money, who have a lot of money, the rich, the millionaire, the billionaire, they get their good share of tax cut. But the general public, the constituent, even a Republican constituent who love tax cuts so much, they get absolutely nothing. Peanuts, if anything. I remember during the Bush first year in office, he distributed the surplus that Bill Clinton left behind. The majority of the people receive $60, $100, and so on. But the rich, the millionaire, the billionaire receive hundreds of thousands of dollars. So of course they love the idea, but the majority of the people did not get any tax cut. Now, you could make the argument that, $100 is better than nothing. Yeah, that's an argument. But that's a false argument. And I'm going to tell you why, so that we can jump back to the topic at hand. The same thing just happened under the Trump administration, where $1.5 trillion were borrowed under the banner for the people. $85 to 90% of that money were used to be distributed to large corporations and wealthy individuals. I mentioned here before in this program that that's just an example, because that's what we use as example discussing this very problem that Blue Cross and Blue Shield received in 2018 almost $300 million in refund, in reimbursement from the government. How much did you receive? In fact, I know people in the middle class who actually have to send money back. I gave the example before here that I do my brother's tax, and until 2018, he usually get anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 back in refund. But under the new tax reform, he actually had to spend money to send money back. So the idea that what Republicans do that they call tax cut, and the Republican constituent loves so much because they lie to them, they're not upfront about it, because they do not give a tax cut to their constituent, but constituent believe that's what it is. So they hate Democrats saying we're going to raise taxes to pay the debt, but they love the idea of Republicans saying you're going to get a tax cut, when in fact that's not true. So in other words, Republican constituents love to be lied to, and Republican legislators, knowing that, capitalize on that and use it over and over and over. Now, just to close that aspect, suffice to say that every time that you see that Republican legislator pass a legislation that says tax cut, always keep in mind that it's a tax hike on you, the what you would call the working class. Example, the $1.5 trillion that was just passed as cut, that you probably receive $60, $80 on your paycheck, and you think, great, I love it. But be warned, that was a loan that has to be repaid with interest, but you only get, we as a people, as a group, we only get 10% of that money. But guess what? We, the people, are responsible to repay back 100% of that money. Would you call that a tax cut? Of course not. But that's what your Republican legislators sell to you, and you buy it, and you continue to buy it for several decades now. I say 7+ decades. In the program that we will present to you, we will show you that a century of Republican lying to the constituent, to the country, about what they're doing for the constituent, which have always been the opposite of what they're saying they're doing. So the reason that most Republican constituents hate Democrats is because obviously Democrats are upfront. They say they hate Democrats' policy. Of course you do, because Democrats tell you exactly what it is. But they love Republican policy who tell them that they're doing something when just the opposite is happening. So I understand that problem. So you prefer to be lied to. And it's not just politicians that are doing it. Well, other people are doing that as well, such as Fox. Everybody who sees a way to take advantage of his or her audience use approach of dumbing down the audience. Which brings me to the discussion of the story of capitalism. Today, there is a raging debate. Well, there has been, but 2020 election, raging debate about Democrats offering all of socialist type of program. And that's Republican strategy to win re-election, because they never have anything better to offer except to create a monster. Everybody hates monster. Everybody is afraid of monster. So every election, Republican bring forth a monster. Under Obama, it was he wasn't American. Black, he's a Muslim. There is always a monster that the Republicans have to bring forth to the conversation, not solution, not a way to get the country out of the predicament it's been in, but rather create a monster, offer to the constituent and say, you really don't want that monster, do you? And that's what they keep doing. Every time that they go to the constituent, they show the monster. And the constituent, as I mentioned many times here in this program, Republican constituents are naive and they're gullible. They always accept rationale offered by their legislators as being true. Look at Donald Trump today, who's been lying to the constituent since, has he not lied? And yet, the Republican constituents are just fine with that. So the others are simply capitalize on that idea that the Republican constituent liked to be lied to. So you don't tell them the truth, you just tell them something that they like to hear, and you take advantage of that. And everybody has been doing that. Everybody in the Republican side. They all go by walk in one beat, in harmony. George W. Bush couldn't say nuclear, he said nuclear. And guess what? All the Republican legislators and everybody was saying the same thing. Nuclear, nuclear, nuclear. Until it becomes a word. Republicans, when I say that, it's not something I imagine, it's not the story of a damn liberal telling you that. That's a fact. Century of data cannot lie. Now, as such, the story of slavery started with the form of, or the great idea of capitalism. Remember, we started to talk about slavery. We left off at the bottom of the bridge. Remember, after the Civil War? Well, we never finished that story, and it's not a story that's going to end anytime soon, because racism is rampant in America. Discrimination rampant in America. So I doubt very much that is a story that's going to die anytime soon. But we try to, at this point, show the irony in life as to how we human, those who usually portray themselves as having a certain level of morality, integrity, are usually the very individuals who are doing the worst to our society. You may recall that slavery was mostly in the South. In fact, the Civil War happened. We're not gonna rehash that. We talk about that for almost 2+ months. So I strongly would encourage you to visit the People Branch YouTube channel and search for a topic like war on blacks, racism, discrimination, those kind of label, and you will find that already begun the conversation about race relation in America. And while you're there, do not leave without subscribing in order for us to have the opportunity to send you invite to send you updates about what is going on here with the Fourth French program. We discuss the details behind, kind of walk through the period of slavery in order to not only to set to bring a context to the conversation about race relation in America. Now, we call the program War on Blacks for obvious reason, and we mentioned that war suggests casualties, and we've been showing that there has been casualties, not just physical casualties, emotional casualties, financial casualties, psychological casualties. There have been casualties. Now, what's the relationship? First, the biggest irony of things. Who doesn't love having money? Who doesn't love making money? Everybody does. In fact, the very effort in our lives, all the hustling and bustling, but getting up in the morning, rushing to go to work, fighting traffic, getting upset over a terrible boss, or getting frustrated with coworkers, all that becomes part of a race to get better financially. Otherwise, what would be the point? So we undo all that, not for the sake, not because we masochist, but because we want to improve our financial situation. So of course we would love capitalism. We would love to be able to make as much money as the next guy, to become as rich as the next guy. But the irony is when we go as far as rationalizing evil in the name of capitalism. For instance, slavery was not just about whites hating blacks. I'm sure that for those who are students of history would know that. It was about making money, about a more effective way, a cheapest way to make money. So blacks were the tools used for that, because the whites would buy slaves. It's a one-time fee. Don't have to continuously paying for the service. And on top of that, they get to mistreat the property that they have. Well, it's a property. So the irony is this: the individuals who climb on their high horses as being Christian, who climb on their high horses of being patriot, climb on their high horses of having high integrity, morale, those are the very individuals who can rationalize doing evil so that they can get richer. The irony of life. Yes, the very individual, as I always mention here, claiming a label doesn't make anyone that whatever the label says. Claiming to be patriot doesn't make one a patriot. So here you are, a number, millions of people in the South who claim to be Christian conservative, who claim to have morality, who claim to have integrity. But those were the very people who could sit and rationalize slavery. Not only for the purpose of enriching themselves, but also torturing, killing, executing the very individual that they've enslaved. How is that for Christian? How is that for integrity? Now, one could say that was the time. In fact, today, that's a rationale. Most people who are still racist, who are still bigots, they still use those type of rationale as a cop-out, as a way out of the situation. There is no way out of the situation. Whites caused that problem. And I brought that up is because a few days ago, Ta-Nehisi was on Capitol Hill making a case for reparation. Now, whenever the topic comes, as I always mention to you, here, it is very easy for me to spend 5 minutes with an individual and know that whether that person is racist or not. You don't have to tell me you're not racist. If you're a white individual, you don't have to argue the case you've never done anything racist. You don't have to say anything. A normal interaction with a white individual would give me all the information that I need about that individual. Because a racist just cannot help it. It's in the language, it's in the action, it is in the behavior, and no matter how much that individual try not to show, it is human nature. Whatever you are will come out, and a racist sooner rather than later. And I mentioned before that it's not that Democrats are not, you don't find racists in the Democrat Party. Most of those who are racist try to suppress that feeling of racism. It's unacceptable. Republican, on the other hand, they feel open to practice it, to act it, to blurt it out. And now, especially with Trump in the Oval Office, it becomes legitimate. If you ever watch Fox, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. I've already written several articles to that regard. Say Fox is a haven, Fox, the Republican Party, haven for racists. You find most of those individuals who felt comfortable being racist, expressing racism, are Republicans. And this is unfortunate. Not every Republican is a racist, but most are. Now you take somebody like Mitch McConnell, for instance. He could dance on his head and argue that I don't have any problem with blacks. I'm not racist. As I mentioned to you before, and I mention it again, do not listen to what people tell you. See what they do, and you will know whether they are racist or not. Mitch McConnell, since the advent of Donald Trump as the president of the United States has been pushing on the Supreme Court individuals who are openly racist as judges. Now, you can tell me all you want about not being racist. It's not that he's learning those things as a surprise. He has the information in his hand before he make that decision, and yet he rally behind him, his troop, and say that individual to the bench. What do you think that do to racism in the country when you keep putting in those positions individuals who are openly racist? You cannot end racism by continuously putting in position of power people who are racist. It just cannot happen. So if you're not racist, you cannot promote racism. It doesn't happen that way. You have to be racist to like the idea of racist in order for you to continue to promote racism. And Mitch McConnell is one such individual. He can dance on his head. He can say whatever he wants. He can say, "Well, I even have that as part of my as part of my administration." That means what? Long-term goal is to make certain that enough racist judges are available to do the most damage to the blacks. So don't pay any attention when you hear those people talking and say, "We're not racist, we're doing everything to change the situation." Well, why not start with legislation? Why not start with not putting on the bench judges who are racist? So telling, and those are words that politicians in general are very good at using, because they figure out that most people would listen to them and believe them. I'm not one such individual. I watch what people do, and I base what you are on your action, not on your words. Because you can tell me anything you want. The devil shows up and say, "I'm us." And Republican in general, Republican legislators have been doing that a lot. They've been saying one thing, and their action, their policies, their legislation have been doing just the opposite to help the black community. And sometimes I wonder, especially about those black individuals in Congress, in the Senate, that going along with that and think, "Oh, it's Republican, let's vote Republican." In other words, blacks who go along with that are also guilty of helping making these things more prominent in our nation. Just a few days ago, that was last Thursday, Laura Ingraham, that lady, she works at Fox, and she also has a podcast. When I tell you that most of the racists individuals are Republican, this is not a joke. Every opportunity that they have, they beat it up. In fact, if you go on Fox, it is a guarantee that Fox has made a fortune out of having anchors, hosts who express, who support, who racism. Now, Fox is not a news organization. That's something that should not be news to anyone listening to this. But they also, Fox, the host, I don't know if they sort of pep talk in the morning or some sort of talk a reminder as to what the goal is, but it has been going on at Fox for as long as Fox has been in existence. So a few days ago, that lady, who happened to be a bona fide racist, went into a rampage in a podcast to rebuke what Ta-Nehisi has been was doing on in Capitol Hill by making a case for reparation. And her famous sentence is, "You don't get a do-overs. No do-overs, that's it. You lost, we won." And by that, what she meant, we white people won, you black people lost. I'm not joking, I'm not kidding. Now, he is an individual who has been making a fortune on Fox, who has an audience listening to her. Now, granted, Republicans are already inclined to be racist to begin with, but you would expect usually someone in position of influence, such as Ingram, Carson, Sean Hannity, and so on, those would be voice of reason to guide the audience to light. That's what one would expect. Instead, those are the very individuals that are inciting race war. Now, what exactly does she get except that, obviously, because it's no news, no surprise that she's a racist, because she has made it clear many times. But for her to continue to use that, even in the midst of conversation about many people now coming out and realizing that, yes, it is time for the country to pay its due. The United States of America was built on blacks. The wealth was built on blacks. So it's time the country to recognize the wrongdoing your ancestors have done to blacks and decide it's not that it's going to be okay because the harm was already done, but a form of saying, well, we're sorry for what our ancestors did. But instead, you have fools like Laura Ingram, Sean Hannity, continuously repeating those things as if they were okay. You lost, we won. And that's her argument. And those are the individuals who prevent any form of progress to be made in this relation. They cannot keep their tongues. They do not have a brain to use on the air. But most importantly for them, they do have an audience who is receptive to those kind of nonsense, to the kind of talk, racism. So that's how they make money. But you have a station that completely, fully relies on those type of individuals in order to have the largest viewership in the nation. How about that for capitalism? The problem is more widespread than you think. Now, I mentioned before, and I'll mention it again. The biggest difficulty we have as a nation to solve lingering problems, social problems such as race relation, is not because all the whites are racist, but rather because you have millions of search like Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and so on at Fox, who are not just racists, who subscribe to racism, but they also use the position of influence to continue to create generation of racists by saying it's okay to be racist. Those are people who love capitalism because you know what? You can rationalize evil and make money. What a concept, eh? Sean Hannity brought George Zimmerman on his show to talk about how good it was to kill Trayvon Martin. Raise money for him, sell painting in order to say, don't worry, you can go and kill some more blacks because we get your back. How about that for capitalism? You have a network who base making money on propagating hatred, spreading racism, promoting bigotry, and that network happened to have the largest viewership in the nation. How could you not like capitalism? But it didn't start yesterday, we know that. We talk about slavery and show you that for centuries we've been having that. Now I'm going to show you the reason when you see people like Mitch McConnell making decision to place on the Supreme Court or higher court in general judges who are racist, inclined to be racist, have racist tendency. Not just judges, you have somebody like Jeff Sessions who was openly racist, who hates black. That individual was the Attorney General. Now you have another one who would not talk much about what would he do in cases involving racism. So when you have those type of people being confirmed in Washington, and then you have those same senators and congressmen telling you they're not racist, and you believe them, I'm going to show you how far back that type of behavior began and why it is important not only to pay attention to, but to try to defeat that type of approach, because Mitch McConnell doesn't have to do anything racist overtly except to place those individuals in position so that they can continue to be detrimental to blacks. And he can simply say, see, I'm not racist, I'm not the one doing it. Don't listen to what those individuals are saying, especially when you hear a Republican telling you, making rational argument. Pay close attention to what they're doing in Washington, because telling you they're not racist, that's what they have to say. Would they tell you they are? Only a few individuals who are known or who want to be on the spotlight would say that they are racist, the white supremacists. Not even all of them, some of them, as you see that they always have something they're hiding behind. So nobody wants anybody to know they're racist, but their action clearly dictate that's what They are. And I'm going to show you the danger of not paying attention, or believing those senators who are telling you they're not racist, but at the same time placing judges with racist behavior, racist tendency, racist inclination. And I'm going to show you how detrimental that is, not just to black, but to society at large. And those senators, we know them, we've seen them. They've been smiling, smirking, been talking all kind of nonsense, and yet behind the scene they're doing everything that actually detrimental to society. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relations in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel explains, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. Let me read to you a case which happened in 1857. That was Dred Scott versus Sanford. Now, Dred Scott, that guy, was a black guy, obviously, a slave. And his master name was Sanford. Now, according to history, when his master moved to a part of Missouri, they were living obviously in Missouri, but when his master moved to a part of Missouri that where slaves were free, or where slaves could be free, I should say. Of course, Dred Scott was still enslaved. Of course, being in a environment that he could not get out of, he stayed with the master. But knowing that at that time it was
what you would call his will to continue to stay. Now you can look at the logic of trying to of him trying to get out of the situation, but it's not as simple as it sounds, because obviously he was in a part of the country, in a part of the state rather, that and the whole South, as you may recall, was still enslaved. But there was a small part of Missouri which was called a free territory in Missouri. But escaping or leaving would also put Dred Scott in a situation that, well, he could have been killed. So for whatever his mindset was at that time, so he stayed with the master. But later, Sanford decided to go back, the master, to go back to another part of Missouri now, which in which part that slaves were not free. So Dred Scott, who was a self educated individual, decided, of course, from the little that he knew, decided to sue his master in order to be free. Because now that the master to be completely free, because he went to a place where he was more or less free and see probably the difference in treatment, so he decided to, well, sue the master in order to obtain his freedom and become a citizen, a full-fledged citizen. The case is known, and most students of history, especially if you're studying Black history, you would more likely have learned about that particular case, Dred Scott versus Sanford. Now, when he sued his master, the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled against Dred Scott. Here's what Chief Justice Roger Taney said. Remember I mentioned earlier, when you see people like Mitch McConnell placing on the Supreme Court or any high court individuals who are racist, bigots, inclined to be, those individuals continue the task for that, whatever that their inclination, whatever they believe in, they continue to do that. Position to make impact, long-lasting impact. And that individual, Chief Justice Roger Taney, he spent almost 30 years in the Supreme Court, 28 to be exact. Almost 30 years spreading racism, bigotry, and opinion that are completely detrimental to blacks. Now, in that particular case, is what Justice Roger Taney said. Black people are not included and were not intended to be included under the word citizen in the Constitution, and can therefore claim none of the rights and privileges which that instrument provides for and secure to citizens of the United States. Let me read that to you once again. Chief Justice issued an opinion and said that black people are not included and were not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and can therefore claim none of the rights and privileges which that instrument, meaning the Constitution, which that instrument provides for and secures to citizens of the United States. Now, would you be surprised? Nowhere in the Constitution did it ever make mention of black or white. But Roger Taney could come up with a justification to deny Dred Scott citizenship because he said that it were not black were not intended to be included. You see how a racist individual can influence generations of people? That's his interpretation, because nowhere in the Constitution did he say any such thing. But he said were not intended. That's his interpretation. Did the framers say blacks, whites only are supposed to become citizens? They never say any such thing. Now, there is no way of arguing whether it could have, but they did not. So we have Mitch McConnell today stuffing High Court, the Supreme Court, with individuals who have dubious opinion on the issue of race. And Mitch McConnell knows that. But he knows that those people will help derail blacks. He's seen it. He lives it. He brushed with those ideas and those people. So those individuals in Washington, especially Republican legislators, they're not just lying to their constituent, something they've been doing for over a century. They deceive their constituent. They promise one thing and do something completely different. But they're also bad for society, because they have been preventing progress from being made in the race relation in America. So me personally, I don't pay any attention to what those people say, because I know most of what they say is to appease, most of what they say is to deceive. That's why I spend most of my time reading their legislation, dissecting their legislation, because the legislation say a lot about those individuals. Because what they say with their mouth means what? As you can see, 1857, that's before the Civil War, just 4 years shy of the Civil War. As a matter of fact, I can say with a certainty that that decision was a catalyst that would later make it possible for Abraham Lincoln to make his decision that yes, slavery has to be abolished. Because that opinion by Chief Justice Roger Taney was a landmark in determining blacks' fate in America. Now, if we assume for 1 second there was no civil war, that opinion now prevent any possibility for any black to have ever dreamt of any time in their lives to become free, to become citizen, because that's what Chief Justice Roger expressed. Whose opinion can change generations of people, of a race. Those are the type of individuals that are being placed on the Supreme Court today by Mitch McConnell to continue doing the damage that his ancestors have done to blacks in America. It is difficult not to see the impact, the severity, the criticality of the Chief Justice, who is supposed to be someone who has wisdom, but nevertheless a racist, making an argument that makes it impossible for black to ever have freedom in America, to ever become citizen in America. That's the Chief Justice. He was the 5th Chief Justice, 1857. That was his ruling. That was his opinion in Dred Scott versus Sanford. So obviously, when Abraham Lincoln, who also was a law individual, when he read that, I'm certain he knew what that meant. And he gambled his presidency for a much nobler cause, to put an end to slavery. Those are the kind of individuals that today you have Mitch McConnell and company smirking, smiling, and telling you that they doing things to help. And yet, every action that they take, every legislation that they pass, every policy that they bring forth are met to derail, to push to the side blacks. Mitch McConnell, just like that Chief Justice, has been in Washington too long. That individual was there for 28 years, and yet he didn't bring any sort of wisdom to his opinion. Mitch McConnell has been in Washington too long. And that's why the country cannot go forward, because when you have individuals who spend a lifetime at a position where they become a fixture, so they do any evil and justifies it, they rationalize evil, and he put out there an army of crook and scoundrel to dumbify the constituent to accept their explanation, their argument for doing something that's detrimental to the country. Yes, Republican constituent, your Republican legislators are responsible for the state of affairs in the country, the chaos, the racist behavior, the racist tendency in the court, in the Justice Department. Yes, your legislator, your Republican legislators are at the roots of those problems. We'll be right back.
Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relations in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel explains, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you.
What happened after the Civil War? Now, for those of you who've been watching this program, or if you had a chance to scan the People Branch YouTube channel, you would notice that there are at least a dozen of videos in which we spend a great deal of time talking about the period of slavery, not for the sake of talking about it, but rather to establish some sort of context and to try to understand the interaction between blacks and whites. So we took the journey, which lasted quite some time, and we give you in those videos, in the documentary that's available on the People Branch YouTube channel, a lot of detail and context, but mostly for historical purpose, so that at least we have something to base our discussion of what's going on today and understand exactly the origins of those actions, those events, and so on. For instance, we always mention in this program the indiscriminate shooting of blacks by those police officers whom I label criminals with badges, and we explain as to why this continues up to today, despite outcry, despite many protests, and yet you cannot wake up one day and not read about a police officer shooting, executing publicly a black individual, usually unarmed black individual. This is not without context. This is not anything that happened in the void. It's something that happened because, well, something happened beyond slavery. You see, when Abraham Lincoln decided to put an end to slavery, the Emancipation Act, 1865, an all-out war happened. Now, before we even got to that point, as I always mention in this program, we have two very distinct group of whites in the country. We have whites who are racist, bigots, and who would not change anything to make certain that blacks' plight stay the same or got worse. And we've been seeing that even public display, like Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Gordon Fox, take your pick. There is no lack of those individuals on Fox. But at the same time, you have millions of whites who have always been disgusted by the practice. And that's the big dilemma of race relation in America. Because you cannot take all the whites and put them in one pile. Slavery, whites lost their lives defending blacks, fighting against slavery. So we know that has always been the case. But what makes the situation even more ironic is the fact that the very individuals who are always on their high horses, pretend to be up there. They have integrity, they are patriot, they are Christian. Those are usually the individuals who are always willing to do evil. That's the irony of the whole thing. Because someone who goes to church would have some sort of compassion. You think someone who goes to church would have had, the love in their heart. Oh, those are usually the people who practice evil. We've seen that during the slavery time. They prefer to die. They took weapon. They say, we're going to fight to keep slavery. Those were the Christian conservative. You know, the people who read the Bible, who go to church on Sundays, who think God is going to come to save them, send their kids to college. Yes, those same individuals you would think has a little bit more understanding, a little bit more compassion, wiser. No! It's always those very individuals who can rationalize the evil that they do. So what happened beyond the Civil War? Whites during slavery, masters, beat slave, kill slave, don't have to account for anything. Of course, Abraham Lincoln was, if he were to be today, they probably would have called him a terrorist because he wanted to end something they were doing. They were supposed to see that is wrong, they're supposed to be Christian, they had education, but they did not. Abraham Lincoln did pass Emancipation Act. Fine. Emancipation Act, blacks are going to be slaves, but not really. We're going to make sure that their lives are as hell as it was during slavery. And so when you hear people like Laura Ingraham making the statement she's making it, and she make money out of being whatever she is, but she's expressing her own feeling, her own sentiment, because where those people were as well in the South. Sunday they go to church, reading the Bible, singing praise to God. Before they even set foot on the door, they are already torturing a black, and sometimes it's on Sundays that they would go and expose a black to be executed publicly. Yes, the churchgoers, the Bible readers. Yes, those people that want you to know they're Christian. So this is no surprise what happened after the Civil War, because Abraham Lincoln put an end to slavery, but those same individuals, now we used to be able to identify them very quickly because they were mostly in the South, but with migration, they're all over the place. There is no way to know exactly where they're at until they open their mouth or they ask, such as Laura Ingraham. Those are the same people who did not like what Abraham Lincoln did, and that fine, you think you can put an end to that? You think you can make black lives easier? No way. We're going to make sure that they regret being free. That's why things you see like doing in the Senate is not anything new. Because what Abraham Lincoln did not do, yes, he signed the Emancipation Act, but there was no safeguard for blacks. Blacks were on their own. Yes, you're free to go wherever you want. No safe. So every aspect of justice, every aspect of the government, everything that could help black advance, progress, whites own that. There was not a single black in the process. Everything, the police force, the Justice Department, the Senate, the Congress, the presidency, everything owned by whites. And they say, you think blacks can be free? It's only going to be on paper. Next time we will show you how the indiscriminate killing of blacks started. Those police officers today that are doing that, not only they continuing what started beyond the Civil War, but they also being treated exactly the same way that those individuals who were committing those indiscriminate killing are being treated. You kill a black, no problem. As long as you can bring an explanation. Pin it on the blacks. Say he did something wrong. Say I thought he was going to do something wrong to me. Anything that you can bring to get out of it. So it continues.
1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies presented to its audience as news. Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore.
I hope this presentation was of some use to you. Well, if not, you already know what to do. Send us your comment, criticism, suggestion. Well, let us know how we can make it better. As I always say, this is not going anywhere, so you might as well help make it better. Should you have a particular topic you would like us to discuss right here, let us know. We will research the topic, we will discuss it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Hope to see you again next week. Good day. That was an update through the prism of common. Join us again next MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. See you soon.
The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.